One. Welcome back, guys. This is the latest in our Independent Gyms webinar series. I think this is sort of like number 6 or 7 for series 2. Call it series 2, like we're 100% professional. We're going off a little bit of a different direction this time. We've done a lot of work in the past about product and I suppose retention and sales and that sort of thing. But this time we're looking along the lines of diversity, inclusion and equality. So a little bit of a different topic, but something that we should all be aware of. I'm no expert in this myself. So we've been speaking with Catherine Edmonds, who is Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the English Football League, but also runs her own consultancy called Equitable Wellness Consultants. Catherine is a much more of an expert than I am. We've angled this webinar around how to use sort of cultural diversity as a way to sell membership. So it's not cashing in on that sort of thing, but it's more about, I suppose, being aware of the issues around it and how you can use that to support your members. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to Catherine. Catherine's going to run us through this. So Catherine, over to you.
Thank you very much, Rob. Hi, everyone. I just want to obviously go through just sort of about equality, diversity and inclusion, so the importance of it from a business perspective. And ultimately sort of small wins that you can put in place that don't cost anything to do. I want to wave the white flag now and say, I'm not trying to preach to anyone. I'm not trying to scaremonger. So literally, I just want to help disseminate some information to you in order so you can obviously just be aware of sort of like the change in landscape in this area. So I just want to begin by obviously just giving you a little bit of information about me. A lot of people won't know me, so I just thought just a quick sort of overview of what I've done and why Rob's very kindly invited me onto this webinar today. So I've worked in the physical activity and fitness sector for many years before my swap over to professional football, and I've done a variety of roles in that. So I'm very sort of au fait with sort of being a personal trainer, the duty managers element of it, general manager. And my last role within the physical activity and fitness sector was actually on a funded project which looked to get more disabled people into the fitness industry. And that was through both the employment route as well as just participating in physical activity as a whole. That was very much what sparked my interest around sort of like social justice, if you like, and ED&I as a whole. So yeah, I have the physical activity and fitness sector to thank for that. On the back of that, that was a fixed term contract. On the back of that, I went on to maternity leave, and as we moved back up to my hometown, Liverpool, I managed to secure a job within professional football with the EFL, as Rob's mentioned, as Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Officer. And what this has allowed me to do over the last 4.5 years is basically broaden my knowledge with regards to the legal element of ED&I, also the 9 protected characteristics. So I wasn't just concentrating on disability, I was also looking at gender and race, religion, age, sexual orientation and the rest of them as well. On the back of the launch of Europe Active's manifesto a couple of years ago, I got in touch with them to ask what their plans were around inclusion as a whole. To which they invited me to become the chairperson of their inclusion advisory group, and I've been doing that for the last sort of 18 months, if you like. And it's basically on the back of this that I've found a lot of conversations I've had is people are interested in ED&I but don't necessarily know how to start, or are afraid of saying the wrong thing in case they get chastised. So basically what that led to is me setting up the Equitable Wellness Consultancy as a way to help support gyms, small businesses and whoever else wants it, just to sort of negotiate that minefield, if you like. So that's enough about me. Let's get on to the nitty-gritty part of it. And what I wanted to just go through first of all is what's the business behind ED&I. So ultimately there's 3 different reasons why we do equality, diversity and inclusion. We have the moral aspect of it, and we like people to, we all like to think of ourselves as good human beings, and with that become, we want to treat people how we would expect to be treated, with dignity and respect. So it's about sort of doing the right thing ultimately, as one strand of equality, diversity and inclusion. The other element is the legal element of it. We have the Equality Act 2010 in place in legislation, and so we have a legal duty to do the right thing from that perspective. But also there is a commercial benefit from being more inclusive, and that's the sort of element that I want to focus on today and sort of help you understand a bit further. So I've just done a few bullet points, as you can see, with regards to why businesses, companies, organisations should be doing ED&I. So the first one I think is quite powerful within itself. So the purchasing power of the pink pound, the purple pound and the black pound is worth approximately £284.5 billion in the UK. Just let that amount sink in for a second. So the pink pound is very much around the LGBT community. The purple pound is your disability community. And then your black pound is your ethnic minorities community. But I mean, that's a huge source of income to be able to tap into if you do inclusion correctly. The second point I'd like to make is around millennials and Gen Z. They basically currently hold the most spending power. And with that, they also hold the biggest moral interest around ED&I. So if you would like to look to future-proof your business, then you need to have an vested interest in ED&I, if you like. Millennials have always been known as to the baby boomers as the woke generation. Wait until you meet Gen Z. They take the whole of this to a whole another level. And they're very sort of educated, if you like, around the rights that they have in this area. They're not afraid to speak their mind. And they also have a huge interest in looking to spend local. So they look to do like the local butchers and the local businesses and help support them. So again, there's another reason as a small business why ED&I should be on your agenda, if you like. Next point, representation matters. So if your local community is quite diverse, but if you look at your staffing and it's not as diverse, then the perception to that local community will be, am I welcome? I don't feel I would be welcome. Would they understand my needs or point of view or perspective? So if you have quite a diverse community, and when I say diversity, that comes in all sorts of different remits and whatever, you need to be able to represent, your business needs to be able to represent the local community in which you serve on that one. Next point is about the businesses that spearhead ED&I strategies are 35% more likely to have above average returns in their profits. So there's the profiteering side of inclusion, and it's just simply by being able to have those strategies in place, you're able to tap into the first point, the pink pounds and the purple pounds, etc. on there. Another point, it doesn't really necessarily come with a price tag or a fact or figure per se, but diversity within a business can create diverse thinking. And with diverse thinking comes new ideas, for example, that you wouldn't necessarily think of because it's not something you've experienced, or it's not something sort of that you're aware of. So it's always good to have a diverse workforce as and when you can, because it allows you to tap into other communities and other ideas that, as I say, wouldn't necessarily be on your radar. And the last one is about being genuine in your approach. There's no point doing inclusion if you're not going to be genuine with your action. One, because let's face it, most of us know when we're being BS'd, so we need to we need to sort of, when we don't enjoy that, so why would anyone else on there? But there's also that reputational side of things. If you're not being genuine, it can affect your reputation. Going back to the point of millennials and Gen Zs are technology natives. They've been brought up with social media as very much part of their lives. And we know how social media can enhance or ultimately ruin reputations. We've seen it happen many a times, many examples. So always look to be genuine in your approach. You're not expected to know everything, and be honest and transparent about that. But whatever you are trying to do and to achieve, just look for that sort of genuine approach on there. So talking about sort of reputational damage, etc. I don't want to dwell on this point too much, but I do think it's important to mention. If you are perceived to be discriminatory, then obviously, as I say, with regards to the legal aspect of that, you can then sort of end up having to pay damages to people or customers or staff, that can be. So what I wanted to do is just provide you two examples. Now, they're both different extremes of the sort of spectrum on there. So we've got one that won an age discrimination claim because she was an older lady, was not au fait with technology, couldn't use technology quite as efficiently as she should be able to or could be able to for her job. The organisation didn't help her with training or support her needs. And ultimately, once she took them to the tribunal, etc., she was rewarded £200,000 just based on the lack of training and the lack of intention to train her because of her age. Going on the other side of it, the other example that I have there is from a customer perspective. So it was a couple that went to buy a car. The gentleman spoke English, but his wife didn't. So as part of the negotiations, he would turn to his wife to speak in her native tongue in order for her to understand the process and the conversation. This didn't go down too well with staff, who kept telling them, we're in the UK, you should be speaking English. And as a result, they filed a discrimination claim against them, and both him and his wife won £2,500 in compensation. So, as I say, two extremes on there, but I just wanted to sort of demonstrate that, you know, not being aware and flippant comments can lead you in a bit of hot water there. So moving back to more of a positive conversation vibe, I just wanted to provide you with a few sort of ideas of things that you could look to do in order to become more inclusive and tap into that sort of the financial benefits, if you like, of that. So I've got 4 examples that I'd like to share with you, if that's okay. So the first one I would say is get yourself an awareness calendar set up. It's really, really simple tool, but it's so effective. It allows you to educate yourself on sort of like the different awareness days or months that are coming up, as well as like religious festivals and religious days, etc. So I don't know how many people know, but today, this week from the 9th to the 15th, it's Mental Health Awareness Week. So that's something that you could look to sort of advertise. We all know the benefits that physical activity have on mental well-being. So it could be that you do an event or something around that. Obviously, we've just come off the back of Ramadan as well. So different communities will have different sort of percentages of populations from ethnically diverse communities. But again, it's something that you could look to tap into, educate yourself around. Actions could be something as simple as just changing your opening hours or opening a little bit later in order for them to break the fast at sunrise and then come to the gym. I know one of the budget chains, 24-hour budget chains, did some research around this recently. And what they found is during the Ramadan time, there was a significant increase. There's a 29% increase in gym visits between 12 and 2 o'clock in the morning. And that was serving their community, their Muslim community on that basis. There are other ones as well, obviously. There's Deaf Awareness Week, which we've just also passed in May. June, we have Pride Month, for example. October, we have Black History Month. December, we have International Persons of Disabilities Day. So there's lots that you can get involved in there. But as I say, it's an educational piece. You can set two sort of strands up with that. You could have it as actions, so you make a day of it or a week of it, or you have the other side where you just acknowledge it via social media. So there's, as I say, there's different ways you can do that. What I would say is, and it is a running joke, there is basically near enough a day every day of the week in the calendar. Don't worry about doing something for every day. You're not going to physically be able to do it. It's going to be exhausting, and you're going to lose the point of acknowledging those days. So just pick sort of like a handful, say 4 events throughout the whole of the calendar year that you want to recognise and do something about. And it might be something that's close to your heart. It may be something that you know is quite a hot topic within the industry at the moment. So in the UK, I found mental health quite a big one, but also that menopausal piece as well at the moment. So you could do something around that. But there's loads of different options, and what you choose to do will vary business to business, area to area, region to region. So pick what suits you and what is your business needs. So moving on from that, know your demographic. We do this a lot with the football clubs at the moment, in which they have their fans, they say, oh, we're not diverse, but you know, football's for everyone, how can we include them? We're not excluding anyone. No, that no one is intentionally excluding someone, but what it does do is you need to understand what the perception is of the industry or is of the business, for example. So you can go on sort of like National Office for Statistics. The census is the most recent census is due to publish their results in the coming months. Have a look to see what your local community breakdown is. Do you have a higher level of women compared to men? Do you have an older general population compared to other areas? Is there a large LGBT community on your doorstep? Once you know that, you can then connect your calendar dates, if you like, and events to that. So I think that's important, because it would also shape some of your policies that you would have as well. So once you know the demographic of your local area, what I would also suggest is you go and you do some outreach. We work in an industry which is very much based on relationship building and having those relationships. Why wouldn't we do that with the outside world, so to speak? So have a look at LGBT groups that potentially are in your local area, or WI institutes or disabled groups or whatever, and look to build a relationship with them. Not only then have you got that conversation flowing, so you can then sort of look to invite them into your gym, etc. You could also use them as a sounding board. They come with lived experience, and they will be able to ultimately help shape your business and maybe your policies a little bit further into sort of how to be more inviting to their community. So building those relationships is really, really important, and such an easy thing to do. It just takes the time rather than its monetary value in there. And lastly, it is member surveys as well. We all probably do member surveys sort of on an annual or a sporadic basis, but dig a little bit deeper with what you're asking, rather than, oh, do you love our gym? Yes, no, maybe have a look a bit. How can we improve? Do you think that we are open for everyone? Ask them, also take the opportunity to ask them about the equal opportunities information. So age, sex, gender, etc. And then that will give you an idea of what your current business and customer base looks like versus what your local demographic is. And you can see how close you are, and maybe sort of it'll give you an informed thing to make those changes that you require to become sort of more inclusive and increase that membership base. So they were the four sort of topics that I had. As I say, they're all free of charge to do. They take a little bit of time, but they're just easy wins, and it'll give you a better understanding of sort of the gaps, I suppose, in your business and where they can be improved. And lastly, just if you are interested or in what I do, or any of the information I've spoken about today has sparked a bit of an interest, or you want to learn more, then there's my LinkedIn web page, and also my contact details, my email address on there, and it's Equitable Wellness Consultancy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. That's really sort of quite an eye-opener. I don't know if you can see, I've been scribbling down a ton of notes. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and it's going to be a bit mumble jump, like all over the place, but there we go. So I think it's really interesting subject. I think a lot of people are not scared of, but sort of cautious about. They're maybe getting it wrong in a way. So trying to do things in the right manner, but not hitting the right mark, if that makes sense. But I think it's, I'll just scribble down here, just about being an open business is sort of a headline thing. If you're open to everyone, hopefully you won't go wrong, if that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. I think you need to make a conscious effort of how you see yourself open to everyone, if that makes sense. I've heard this both from obviously the football clubs, but also gym owners as a whole. And it's like, well, we don't discriminate. We'll sell a membership to anybody, we'll sell like a season ticket to anybody. Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second that you will, but that's not what's necessarily preventing people from coming through the doors. It could be the perception. As I say, representation matters. How do they know what my needs are if nobody looks like me and has had similar life experiences as me? So it's about sort of looking at those, looking what you can do to be more encouraging, rather than just saying, well, we'll sell a membership to anyone. Yeah, and I think those practical tips at the end are probably going to be the way to do that, I suppose. The other, I've made a note as well. I think for me, I always think about this sort of subject around religion and sort of cultural sort of requirements, but when we talk about disability and also mental health in the end as well, it's such a broad subject. So it's not just about, don't focus just on the religious sort of area, but focus on the other side as well. The disability one, for perhaps maybe I look at that as almost two levels. There's probably some really simple things you can do, whether that's accessibility, but then there's probably more expensive things in terms of straightforward widening doorways for disabled users, that kind of thing. So there's a twofold trench there, but there's a lot of simple bits you can do around disability to be more open.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, buildings generally from 2010 onwards have doors that are the right sizes for wheelchairs to access. So it's usually only if it's sort of your building is pre 2010 on that. But you're right, there's expensive changes that you can make, and then there are cheaper versions. So if someone was partially sighted, for example, something really, really simple is you could do a contrast line on your wall. And what that would allow is for that partially sighted person to be able to navigate their way unaided to different parts of the gym. You could color code it to say, okay, follow the red line, that'll take you to the toilet and the changing rooms, follow the green line, and that'll take you to the gym floor. So, I mean, a pot of paint doesn't really break the bank, does it, ultimately? And then I don't know sort of what businesses do with regards to their website, but if you've designed and built your own website, then ultimately there's a lot of, depending on how you built it, can make it more accessible. So again, you don't need to go and buy Recite Me, for example. There's many other toolkits. That's just one example, which is a monthly fee. You can build in the sort of the elements already when you build your website. So there's loads of different things you can do. You can have your staff trained to become more disability aware. So when I was doing the Sport England funded project, I took those students and I put them on a work placement, and it was with the GLLs of the world, it was Fitness Firsts of the world, it was in groups of the world. It was a whole host and a few independents along the way as well. And there was, I'll never forget, I had a deaf student, and and the gentleman who was showing us around was like, oh yeah, can't wait, really looking forward to this. Right, come on, turns her back to the student and walked off talking. Well, as a deaf student, she can't see what you're saying. So I had to drag him back and be like, no, look, she can lip read, but she also has an interpreter with her. So as long as the interpreter can hear what you're saying, which she can't if you're a million miles ahead, then obviously that's it. I mean, he wasn't doing it intentionally, but it just made it difficult. So it's just having that sort of that disability awareness about your thing.
I think that's the key, isn't it? I think nobody does this nobody's intentionally doing these things or not realised, but it's just being, like I say, being aware, changing some of your behaviour ever so slightly, just to include other people and to make life easy for these people when they're in your club. So yeah, I like that one. I think the staff training is definitely the way forward. I think it's an area that I think the bigger companies almost in the past have been told to do, perhaps, so it comes from senior management down and it filters through, whereas independence is perhaps not on the radar. So how do we open the doors to provide the staff training? So maybe that's something we can have a look at later. We can talk about that. The bit I really like, and well, there's two bits: the demographics, understanding your community, understanding the demographics around you. And a lot of time that can be quite an obvious sort of visual, so you know who's living in the streets around you. But I think gyms do it when they open a new facility. They'll look at something like a latent demand report, where they'll look at the socioeconomics of the community, but perhaps that would include the cultural sort of statistics as well. So you could use that to guide your club, I suppose.
Absolutely. I mean, the statistics around sort of the different communities, the LGBT community and the disability community and the ethnically diverse community, I mean, that's a phenomenal figure. And I think anyone wants to tap into that sort of money pot. It's definitely worth looking at, but also with the sort of the demographics. If you know what your demographics are and you know what your and having those sort of member surveys as well, what it also enables is for you to then map out the journey that you're doing as a business around ED&I. So if someone was to say, oh, you're not doing much around this part, or you're not doing that, you can say, well, hang on, this was our starting point, and this is where we've now progressed to. So it demonstrates progression to anyone that would like any sort of critics, I suppose, in one sense, but it also allows you as a business to celebrate your journey. Everyone likes to see progress. Everyone likes to see sort of hitting goals, and there's no reason why you shouldn't be celebrating it. So it's nice to be able to look back and say that's where we've come from and that's where we are today. I
agree. Right, last bit for me, and I think this is probably the bit bringing back to the title about using cultural diversity to sell more memberships. To me, the genius part, and this is the salesman in me, is that the calendar of events. Now, I think back to my membership sales days when I would have to do outreach, and it was always Valentine's Day, Love Hearts on Valentine's Day. It was those sorts of obvious things, but where you can use religious and different sort of events. You mentioned Ramadan, and that's the obvious one to me, is how do you use that, but also other events that go on throughout the year to sell memberships. And I think it's more about having that talking point on socials, in the club, and outreach as well. And as a salesperson, as a gym owner, I would love to have that kind of just mapped out for me to say these things are happening, and you can tailor your outreach around that. So the Eid and the Ramadan and the fasting sort of scenario is perfect. And you mentioned extended opening hours, but I also scribbled down here about the type of training that you're encouraging your members to do. And if you're aware, they may still come into the club, but perhaps you're not pushing them as hard in the PT session, or you're having different types of classes where it's not so intense. So I think things like that, and I think the calendar of events is such a brilliant idea. And it helps gyms plan, helps them get ahead.
That's it. It is really a simple win, and you can tailor it to your demographics as well, which is you know, the best bit, I suppose, in that sense. But yeah, no, there's loads that can be done, and as I say, there's lots of hot topics and talking points going on in the industry anyway around mental health and sort of well-being is a huge piece at the moment. So it makes sense to, you know, be part of that.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we can probably try to do is look at we have the document download section on our website. I'll look to create this calendar with the key points in. I'll grab you offline for that and we'll scribble some down. But I think that would be such a useful tool for all gym owners to use, regardless of where they are and their community around them, just as a guide, really. So yeah, that was my last point there. I think that's genius. So there we go. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you very much for hosting today. I'm not sure if you're around for our summer conference. I've penciled you down for a ticket to come and join us on the day anyway. So if anybody's watching and was listening in, we're going to get Catherine's Equitable Wellness Consultancy loaded up onto the platform in the consultancy section. If you want to reach out, you can do so through there or via the email address that we've got here. It's been great sitting in, listening, learning a bit more. So unless there's anything from yourself, Catherine, we'll sign off there.
No, just thank you very much for having me on, and I hope the points I've made have been useful.
Yeah, fantastic. Catherine, thank you very much, and we'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye now.